everybody, and LeAnn, I'm super glad you're here to talk to us about preparing flowers and vegetables to exhibit at a county fair. And what she tells us about her presentation. As gardeners, we all spend hours tending to our plants and gardens, yet very few of us enter them in a county fair. We'll talk through the basics of exhibiting, what judges look for, hints for a ribbon-winning exhibit, and answer questions that prepare you to submit an entry to the Douglas County Free Fair. LeAnn is a lifetime gardener, having completed the Master Gardener program in 1999 and completed judging certification for the National Council of State Garden Clubs in 2005. She has judged open class and 4-H floriculture at fairs in Franklin County, Leavenworth County, and Vinland, and currently works as a floral designer specializing in weddings and special events. And here's LeAnn.
Thanks, Chris. It's really nice to be with all of you today. I've wanted to talk about this topic with you for a number of years, and our intent was to do it in 2020, but we all know what happened in 2020. Everything went to Zoom, and there were no fairs, so there was really no opportunity to exhibit. So with being able to talk about this, and with the Douglas County Fair starting in about a month, this is just so, I think, so timely. As Chris said, I have done judging of floriculture, 4-H, and an open class at county fairs. I have not had the opportunity to judge horticulture. However, for 3 or 4 years, I was co-superintendent with Carol Anderson at the Douglas County Fair of open class flowers. And we shared a table with the horticulture people. And so I have had numerous opportunities to kind of listen in and get an idea of how that process works. And so I'd like to share that with you to the best of my abilities. I've never entered anything in the horticulture class. I have entered flower shows, so I'm more of an expert on flowers, but I know more than the average bear, I think, about horticulture. So today I'm going to talk to you about, basically, we're going to start with the fair rules and regulations, and then I'm going to talk to you about what judges look for. They look for very similar things in both horticulture and floral. And then I'm going to show you examples of how to prepare so that you exhibit your entries to the absolute best ability that you can. Fairs, county fairs, are really a way of educating people, and that fits so well with your Master Gardener mission. One of the things that I think is an opportunity for Master Gardeners at the county fair is, when you're entering something, is to include not just the class that it's in, so let's say carrots, but if you can include the cultivar, the variety, because you will then be able to educate people if they walk around and they look at your exhibit and think, oh my gosh, I might, want to try to grow that type of carrot. If you've got like a Paris market carrot, that's the variety, or anything else, just to include that on your registration form. It's certainly not, it won't preclude you from entering, but it'll just give that extra edge and educational bent to the whole thing. So the first thing you're going to want to do, the Douglas County Fair book is out there already online. And Sharon's she'll share the website with you, but it's www.dgcountyfair.com and /fair info. And if you go to that page and you scroll down, and I apologize, I cannot quite read this, it says the 2021 Fair Book. And so you're going to want to click on that. And it's going to bring, the Fair Book is huge. It includes everything for 4-H, it includes cattle, it includes absolutely everything that is exhibited at the fair. So the first couple of things you're going to be interested in, what's on the first couple of pages. And that is the schedule of events, because you are going to want to know when you need to enter your flowers or your horticulture. The fair actually starts on July 17th, but there's a lot of things that go on prior to us having this open class exhibit. So on Sunday, July 25th, between the hours of 2 and 5 p.m., that is when you're going to want to bring your entries and to enter the flower and horticulture part of the fair. There's other things that are happening at that are registering at that same time, but it's Sunday, July 25th from 2 to 5. And the judging then is on Monday morning, the 26th at 8 a.m. Now, for those of you that have exhibited in the past, this is a change. Previously, entries were received on Mondays afternoon, probably starting about 1 o'clock to 7. And then right after that, so from the time that they closed the entries, that's when they were judged for the flowers. This change may impact what you decide to enter because specimens are judged at the time that the judges look at them. So if you are thinking of entering, let's say, a daylily, we know how long that lasts. So if you are going to enter a daylily, you're probably going to want to bring and enter something that's a little bit tighter on Sunday afternoon or late Sunday afternoon, so that when it is judged at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, it is open. Because if you're bringing this big, beautiful bloom on Sunday afternoon, we all know what happens to daylilies, and by 8 o'clock on Monday morning, it's probably not going to be a ribbon-winning entry for you. Horticulture has always been judged the following day. This change in the schedule really doesn't impact it. And then your exhibits are going to stay at the fair until Sunday, and they are released between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. So you're going to leave your flowers, your horticulture, everything there, so the public can walk around, look at your varieties, the ribbons that you got, talk about it, and then on Sunday, you come between the hours of 8 and 10 and pick up your exhibit, your ribbons. So if you kind of scroll down to, I think it's page 78 for Flowers Open Class, you're going to have 2 or 3 pages there that are going to talk about the special rules for flowers. So all entries into the floral class need to be grown by the exhibitor. No out raiding your neighbor's garden or going to the garden center to cut something. You need to have grown these flowers. If you're bringing in a plant, you need to make sure that you are bringing in a waterproof dish with that, because they're going to sit there and there shouldn't be any leaking or water dripping from that. For house plants, they want you to have been in your possession for at least 3 months prior to the show. So it's not something that you can go out right now and purchase, and even though you care for it for a month, it really needs to be in your possession for a month, or for 3 months, so that they know that you have really cared for it, you've taken the time to turn it so it grows towards the light, but 3 months. An exception to the growing everything for yourself is going to come if you enter the floral design portion of the open class category. And in that instance, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's about 6 different categories in there. And in that case, you can have your things that you've grown yourself. You can have product that you've purchased from a florist, a grocery store. You can go raid your neighbor's garden for something that looks great. It's just all needs to be fresh flowers. Okay. Now, when you're going to exhibit floral, you are going to want to bring your own container to exhibit it. So you can use a plastic water bottle, a vase. It needs to be clear. They need to be able to see the stems. You want it to be in proportion to what it is that you're exhibiting in there. So you don't want, something this size for a gladiola stem. So you want it to be in proportion. They will not supply bottles for you. They won't supply anything. So just make sure you come prepared with that. Also on the schedule, it's going to talk about the various elements that you need for an entry. So for instance, I'm just going to go down to the first one, which is marigolds. So when you're entering marigolds into the annual category, it calls for 3 stems, not 4, not 2. So in order for it to be a proper entry, it needs to be 3 stems. When you get into things like a petunia or a zinnia, geranium, things like that, it'll call for a single stem. It also talks about the size of the element that you're entering. So if you've got a dwarf marigold, it goes into one category. If you've got a large marigold, it goes into a separate category. So it's broken out that way. So when you're entering it in the floral part of it, you will come and let's just say you've got, let's see, what do I have? Let's say I've got this piece of butterfly weed and I'm going to enter it. I'm going to enter it into perennials. And because there is not a category for butterfly weed, it's going to go into any other flowering plant, any other flowering perennial. And that calls for 1 stem. So I can only have 1 stem. So I've gone out to my garden. I've picked this. I thought it was the best one that I had in my garden. So I do not want the leaves to be below the water line. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the leaves. And this is part of grooming. It's probably one of the only things that you can control in your exhibiting is grooming. And it's amazing how many people forget about that. You need to look closely at your plants. And when you do, you'll find, oh, there's an insect's been gnawing on that. Oh, there's a cobweb. Oh, this is, this leaf is bent or broken. There's a little bit of disease here. So all you really need to do is to remove some of that and you'll still have a fabulous entry. So some of the tools you can use are little paintbrushes. Great for dusting off this little piece of, it looks like cottonwood fuzz. Just gently doing that. If that doesn't take it off, I use a variety of different paintbrushes. I have a little tweezer, so couldn't get the cottonwood off there, so with a tweezer, you'll just be able to pull that off. And you're wanting to go through and look closely at what you've got, because up in here I see that there's a little, looks like a little bug that's hiding up here. So going through and really grooming your specimen is going to give you a real heads up or a real edge on this whole thing. So let's say this is the only vase that you've got, and it's a little big for your specimen. What they will have at the entry table is going to be saran wrap or a clear plastic wrap. And if you look in the rules and regulations, it does allow that they can be wedged. Your specimens can be wedged. So if you are wanting to wedge it, because you really want this, your specimen to stand upright so that it shows in the best way possible. So you just can take, completely legal, completely within the rules and regulations, just a bit of clear plastic wrap and wedge your specimen in there. And then it's going to show much better. And you can do that once you get to the entry table. They'll have that there for you. Some other tools that you can use for cleaning, and whether it be horticulture or your flowers. The flower shop, we use chenille pipe cleaner. It's great for removing pollen. If you've got pollen that's fallen down on the leaves, very gentle. If you need to wash something, if you've got a little syringe, and just to put a couple of drops of water in it. Just having a clipper to remove parts that you don't want, like on this scented geranium. The leaf looks great, but I've got one that's not good, so I'm going to want to cut it off as close as possible. If you're doing grooming, your grooming shouldn't show. So the judges shouldn't be able to tell that you have groomed your plant. So it's getting it as close as you possibly can and not leaving any scars. For horticulture, using a soft cloth to polish your eggplant, clean the dust off your tomatoes, that's also very useful. One thing that judges look for is uniformity. They like it when things are uniform. So if you're exhibiting 3 marigolds, for instance, or once we get to horticulture, a lot of the categories ask for 5 of something or 12 of something. When you're selecting things, you really need to look for things that are similar. You don't want to, for instance, these are all hosta leaves. Okay, so you're going to want to exhibit these 3 versus these 3. Even though this one is a big beauty, you want to make sure that what you're going to be judged on is uniformity. So going out and really looking at what's growing in your garden to make certain that, gosh, these kind of look as similar as possible. Judges look for things that are free of disease. Removing, this is part of your grooming, when you can remove any insect damage or minimize what you can, make sure that it's blemish free. When you are transporting your entries to the fair, that is when most of the mechanical damage happens. So you slam on the brakes, or you're driving and you hear something, slide over in the back where you've got your entries there. And that's usually when things happen. So just making sure that you pack them up really safely, just so they arrive in the best condition that they can. Judges are also looking for the peak of perfection. They don't want to see something that's an immature bloom or an immature fruit, but they also don't want it to be past prime. So really hitting the peak of perfection is something that they look for. Again, uniformity in size, shape, and color. So I kind of addressed that when talking about the hosta leaves. Also, avoid anything that's unusual or atypical of the variety. I think back to a few years ago when there was a disease in hostas, and you might have hostas, but they grew a real funky leaf or whatever. We're not looking for things like that. We're looking for something that is really typical of the variety of the plant, because we're just trying to educate people that that's what that is all about. And also, you don't have to go for the biggest. Especially when you're in vegetables or horticulture, because typically the largest isn't going to be the most flavorful. It's not going to be as tender. So just having an excellent specimen, it doesn't have to be the biggest. As I said earlier, specimens are evaluated on the appearance of judging time. So just keeping that in mind, you want your flowers to be in good condition, so as disease-free as possible. Cultural perfection, so again, having them, making sure that you've really taken care to grow them. Sometimes if things are lacking water or lacking fertilizer, they will become leggy, or too much fertilizer, they will become leggy. And that's really addresses cultural perfection, because you're wanting to give things the best opportunity to grow in. You want your blooms and everything to be a bright, vivid color, not fading or not fading around the edges. Sometimes with zinnias, and when you exhibit them, as they get a little bit older, they start to get a little bit faded on the edges. So you really want this to be a wow factor. When someone walks by the exhibit and sees oh gosh, a brightly colored zinnia, you really want it to be as bright and vivid as possible. When it's possible, leave foliage on. Now, if you've got foliage that's insect eaten and or curling or something, you're going to want to remove that because that's just going to detract from your entry. But if it's possible, you want to leave it on. And again, grooming, don't over groom, but just making sure that it's really as clean as possible. It's amazing to me when you look at something up close, where you will see that, oh my gosh, there's a tiny little spider web there. And none of that really ever shows up until you get it out and you are exhibiting it. So just make sure that you kind of take that extra minute to look it over. And then as far as stems go, you want to make sure the stems are firm, strong. When possible, you want it to be straight. Now I'm going to go a little bit to horticulture. You want horticulture to be of edible maturity. Oh, yes.
Just before you move on
Yes.
to horticulture, there was a question about
Yes.
the flower displays.
Yes.
Can you stretch the cellophane over the top of the base and then punch a hole through it to hold an individual stem?
No, you need to curl it and wedge it. Yes. That's an excellent question. But no, it talks about, I believe in the entry, it talks about, yes, specimens may be wedged. So I don't believe that the clear plastic with a hole in it is going to fall into that category. Okay, going on to horticulture, just for a minute, I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth. For horticulture, you're going to display your entries on white paper plates. And so you need to provide those. They do not provide those at the fair. So if you are entering something small, a little paper plate, like a little dessert paper plate, if you're entering a number of multiple vegetables or specimens in your entry, then a larger paper plate. But make sure you bring those with you. I will also give you a little hint that, and this is about, so if you're going through here, we're going to go through, let's just go through onions, red onions. In order to display, enter red onions, you need to display 5 of them. Again, similar in size as much as possible. Do yourself a favor and throw in a couple of extra, because as many entries as come through there every year, I've heard, oh my gosh, and it's generally, unfortunately, a 4-H'er, but oh my gosh, we left the house with 5, and now we've scoured the car and can only find 4. It's most likely rolled under the seat or something. So just make sure you've got a little extra in your pocket. In the largest vegetable class, that's really the only thing that the only time you're going to go for size. And that all is done by weight. So it's the largest pumpkin, the largest fall squash, largest summer squash, watermelon, etc. But that's all about weight. So if you've got something big and you want to show it off, that's the place to do it. There is a class in the vegetables that is called the best garden display. And that is really more like a vignette. It's something that is done in a basket, or it is something that is done, let's see, like in a basket, something like this. And you display, I believe it's 5 different vegetables. And you want to have sufficient quantity of each vegetable because you want to make a good display. But it's really shown, it's a beautiful way to feature a lot of your vegetables, and very, very colorful. But that is a best garden. That's kind of your only display for horticulture. So in speaking with and talking with you, I'm just going to look under here to show you a little bit about how you're going to exhibit. Like, let's just go, for instance, for grape tomatoes. So under grape tomatoes, it's asking for 5 Roma or grape tomatoes. So you're essentially looking for 5 that are similar. And I don't know if you can see this or not.
Just tip it just slightly. There you go.
There you go. These are 5 that are the same. or very, very similar. What you're not wanting to do is have a variety of these. A couple of these are very tiny. All right, maybe I can hold them up. These two probably, I hope you can see the difference. There's a big difference in length, but also in kind of girth. This would not be a prize-winning entry because there's quite a variety of differences in this. So you're really wanting to exhibit 5 that are as similar as possible. It gets a little bit harder when you get into like some of the fruits. So when you get into like blackberries, for instance, you have to have 12. So I think 12 will fit on a small plate. But again, if these are 12 that are hopefully the same size, you want to make sure that here I've included 2 honking huge ones that do not belong in this. These 12 all kind of are very, very, very similar in size. But if you've got 2 that you don't, you know, you might be tempted to show them off, but they're so much bigger than these other little guys. Keep those at home or eat them. Once you get into things like summer squash or whatever, you're going to start using a bigger plate. I'm going to just go on to carrots because under carrots, okay, it asks for 5. But what I'm going to talk about with carrots is more about grooming. What you're going to want to do is you are going to want to cut off all of the little side roots and trim the tap roots so that they're kind of all even. So this is taking out your little, let's see, I think I have a little manicure scissors here or a little clippers and cutting and removing those as close to the carrot as you possibly can so that they are gone all the way around, and then making sure that the 5 that you exhibit have a tap root that's basically the same length. So trimming the tap root to the same length. You also are going to want to trim the tops so that they are all a similar length, probably about 3 inches, 2 to 3 inches. If you've got carrots that you've that are green at the top, you're not going to want to exhibit those. See if you can dig up something else. But then these all go, you know, are laid down on a large plate. If you're kind of in doubt or have questions about what category you're going to enter your exhibits in, the superintendents at the horticulture table and also Carol and Louise at the floral table can really help you with make that decision. And they position your entries so they look the absolute best that they do. Now, when you have arrived in both instances, you are going to fill out an open class form. First of all, you're going to register your name and your address and your phone number or email address so that they can contact you once you win to let you know that you won, and also as a way to get your fair premiums to you. So make sure you do that. But then this is the entry that goes on your exhibit. So it's essentially your name and address, and then what division you're in. So it's either going to be horticulture or flowers. And then what class you're in. Are you in the, if you're in horticulture, are you in cabbage? If you're in perennials, are you in coreopsis? You know, so just entering the class that you're in, and then this is where you would want to put the variety or cultivar if you know it. So if you've got a mouse ears hosta, you know, including that information, because that's only going to help the people who are walking through the fair, and if they love that hosta leaf and they want to plant it next year, it's going to be helpful for them to know what to go looking for. This is put on your exhibit. Your name is covered up, and then when the judge goes around and judges it, they generally have an assistant, and that assistant marks what, if you've gotten a red ribbon, if you've gotten a blue ribbon, if you've gotten a purple ribbon, that will be marked on here and they'll punch a little hole in it. Now I'm going to flip back to, in fruits, we've got like apples. You're going to want to leave the stem on the apple, but trim it down to about 2 inches, 2 or 3 inches. If you're exhibiting peaches or something like that, just removing the stem. And then there's also a category at the very end that says other fruit not listed above. So, and the same thing with vegetables. So if you are growing something, I don't know, for instance, a couple of years ago, I grew celery. There's not a celery class in here, but you certainly can enter into other fruits, other vegetables. Same thing in the floral categories. There's always other annuals, other perennials. Just keep in mind that when you enter it in that category, you're competing against everybody else who entered something a little bit different. So there's not a celery category, but there might be, excuse me. So in that category, in all others, there might be celery, radishes, I don't know, some other vegetable. So you're kind of competing against those other entries. I'm going to flip back to flowers for just a minute. So one of the things I talked about a little bit with the difference in having us register, excuse me, on Sunday was daylilies. So should you decide to enter for daylilies, just keep in mind that you are going to be, you're going to want to have something that's going to be opening the following day. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of good daylilies, not so much that are going to open the following day, but kind of what you're looking for. Excuse me. So this is a daylily that I picked out of my garden this morning. And if you look at it, it's still got a bud. So it's not really all bloomed out, but it has already had several buds on it. So what you've got here are little pieces of the plant where the buds were. You are going to either need to remove those as close as possible so that they're not visible, or you're going to need to choose a different plant. This is the same variety of daylily, and this one has not bloomed. This is the first bloom on this particular stem. This would be a far better daylily to choose because it's got kind of a future to it, and there's really nothing that you have to groom in order to enter it. You don't need to remove any of the already spent materials. This is one I clipped out of the Master Gardener garden this morning. It was a great entry until I just smashed a leaf. But again, it's already had a bloom that's gone, and we're just going to cut that as close as we possibly can because we don't want our grooming to show. Entering something like a gladiola, which they're big entries at the time that the fair is going on. Gladiolas bloom from the bottom up. And so you're going to want to, this is your biggest bloom. It's going to go up to basically nothing but little buds. A good entry has got 2/3 of it blooming or showing color, excuse me, with 1/3 of it showing really tight buds. Something like this, where it's got really nothing showing, just a little bit of color. This is too immature to enter. It's got a little side bud that you're going to want to, even if it was blooming, you're going to want to remove this because you don't want a side stalk. And if this was you were starting to see that the bottom blooms were fading and it's blooming, pretty much up the stalk, that's also something that you don't want to enter. You really want to have the stems as straight as possible. This is a really nice straight stem, whereas you look at this one and it's pretty curvy, and there are some really creative stems on gladiolas that grow in your garden. So as straight a stem as possible really on all your entries. Sunflowers are a big item of interest. So you're going to want to choose one with a straight stem, but this one is probably past his prime. He's got some blooms, some petals that are kind of reflexing. He's got petals that are turning a little bit brown on the edge. If it were still a viable option without that, you've got some leaf damage, so you're going to want to remove that. And kind of clean that up. Around the center, you're going to take your brush and you can kind of remove some of the pollen that's come off on the leaves and the petals. This one is probably a little too immature. He's not quite open yet. He would not probably win a ribbon for when he's judged, because he probably still wouldn't be open. However, if he's going to sit at the fair and be in water until Sunday at 8 a.m., he's probably going to open nicely. And so, while he wouldn't win a ribbon, he would be very showy. And again, just removing any insect damage, any damage from weather, anything like that. Because what you're wanting to show is really the peak of perfection. Another class in floral is going to be houseplants. And we get a lot of houseplant entries. There are blooming houseplants category, and there are non-blooming houseplant in category. Blooming, begonias, African violets, then there's one that's called any other houseplant in bloom. It needs to be in bloom. If it's something that's a blooming plant, but it's not blooming, it's really not a good entry for the blooming plant category. But this is an opportunity if you grow orchids, oh my gosh, anything that you've got that's blooming that you really want to show off, this is a great way to do it. Again, you're going to need to have a tray that sits underneath it, or a little saucer, if you will. I will also caution you, and this is kind of with anything that you enter at the fair or anything that you bring container-wise or plant-wise, this is a public space, and you have a lot of people that are going through this public space. It can get crowded, it can get hot. So there are accidents that happen, completely unintentional, but something gets bumped or something gets broken. Don't bring your great-grandmother's beautiful crystal vase, or something that is very near and dear to you, that if something should accidentally happen, that you would be heartbroken with, or you would feel terrible about. So while we might want to show off your prize-winning orchid, we just want to make sure that, excuse me, you understand kind of the risk that something very seldom happens, but it could possibly happen. Then when we get into, we also have the other houseplants, which the non-blooming. So you've got a vining houseplant. I am not a good houseplant grower. I've had this houseplant for about 6 years. I don't think it's grown at all. Actually, it's probably starting to now. But this would fall into the vining houseplant category. What they will look for is to see that it's been turned so that it's kind of growing symmetrically, and that anything leaf-wise that is not healthy has been removed. So here I've got a leaf I'm not sure what happened to it. It looks like it's probably seen some sun or something, but cutting that off and doing the grooming on those plants as well. Taking your soft cloth and cleaning the leaves, it's the perfect time to dust all your houseplants to get them ready for the fair. And then again, having a saucer underneath it, making sure your pots are clean. You know, this is a great time to clean up your saucers, make sure that all the kind of that hard water scale is off of them, but exhibiting it like that. There is a category to, that you can have a planter. So it can have 3 house plants in it. The size-wise, it's about 14 inches in length. It can't be any longer, but you could show 3 different house plants in that. The plant category gets very crowded, so there's a lot of people who like to show off their plants. There's also a category for cactus. Again, having a little saucer underneath it. This is a great time to use the little tweezers here. This particular plant has got some perlite that's in it, and so you're wanting to get all of that off. So it's just without damaging the plant. It's like, how do we kind of jostle things or pull it to make sure that it's totally cleaned up. Again, if you know kind of the variety, people love that. In floral arranging, there's a grass category. So there's one for ornamental grasses. If you grow it for foliage, if you grow it for a seed head, that is in there as well. And it just talks about stem length. It's usually about 24 inches in length. Floral arranging, if you try your hand at this, it's a lot of fun. What you are wanting to use is fresh, with the exception of that being a category called everlasting blooms. So that everlasting blooms is something that you can use your dried flowers in. But you're going to want to, you try to reflect kind of the title of it. So one is called Elfin Design, and that's an arrangement not to exceed 8 inches in any direction. So making sure that you've got a small kind of arrangement that's small in scale, the materials that you choose kind of fit into that scale. Holiday design, plant materials and flowers arranged to communicate a holiday theme. Now, you need to be using plant materials. So if using, let's say you're doing a 4th of July arrangement, you can certainly reflect red, white, and blue in your container, but it's not within the rules for you to like put a flag, American flag in it or something like that. So making sure that you are kind of reflecting that theme, but in plant material and something that's living. A real fun one, I think, again, becomes, it's very similar to the horticulture display, but it's called Nature's Bounty, and you use flowers, you use fruits, vegetables, foliage, anything that you want to kind of make a large display of Nature's Bounty. And then there's designer's choice. It's kind of anything that you choose to be creative with. So I think that I've covered off on everything I want to cover off on today that would help you to become a successful exhibitor. You know, whether you're doing it just for fun, just for education, we've all, during the pandemic, everybody seems to have started gardening, so show it off. We have got, you know, whether your goal is that, whether your goal is to win a ribbon, which is always fun when you go walking through the fair and you see that you've gotten a ribbon, or whether your goal is to earn the $2, $3, $4 that you earn by becoming a ribbon winner. But whatever it is, I hope you really enjoy it. It's all about fun. I spoke today about the Douglas County Fair, but it doesn't preclude you from entering fairs elsewhere. Vinland's got a fair. It's the Douglas County Fair entries are not just limited to Douglas County residents. So should you decide you want to go exhibit in Franklin County or Leavenworth County, you know, it's not just a 1 or 2 day thing. You could actually make a whole summer of doing something like this. Sharon, do you have any questions?
Yes, we have a few things here. We have some information in the chat box as well.
Okay.
There was a question about picking up entry cards ahead of time, and Tom put a note
Okay.
in the box saying to check back with the
Okay.
extension to see if that's possible.
Okay.
We don't have them available right now.
Yes, I know that in the past they do that with the 4-H group, but I don't, at least when I have been a superintendent, they had not done that with the open class.
Okay. And then some advice on using navel jelly to remove scale from ceramic pots.
Perfect. Oh, that's excellent.
And there's the Vinland Valley Fair is in the notes too. And then can you say again where to get the copy of all these guidelines?
Sure. Okay. So, and I believe that Sharon's going to send this out to you, but it's www.dgcountyfair.com/fair-info.
And I did put that in the chat, so there's
Perfect.
a link.
Perfect.
And if you go to fair, right here,
2021 Fair Info.
Right.
There's a fair
Yes.
book.
there's a fair book. There's a
Exactly.
Mhm.
And again, you know, like I said, the first couple pages are just going to be general information about the fair. There's a couple of things so that you get that Sunday date for registration and the Monday date for judging. But then scroll down, unless you want to see, you know, go through the pigs and the cows and everything else. You can get to about page 78, which is where floriculture starts. And I think you get 2 or 3 pages beyond that, and that's where open class horticulture is. So unless you're going to read through about the 125 pages that are in there,
It's a substantial document.
it is a substantial document.
Great.
Great.
Well, let me open it up. Does anybody have questions that you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask questions? Anybody want to ask a particular question about something you're thinking about entering? You're looking out at your garden from your Zoom session here, and you're looking out and seeing what's ready. Do you have a question about anything in particular that you're growing?
Well, I was kind of thinking when it's a combined arrangement of flowers. For example, you have, you know, some yellow, pink, and violet in an arrangement. I wonder what you look for in combined flowers.
So really, what as a judge you're looking for is to make certain that you follow the theme. So that when the judge looks at it, that they can say, let's see, we've got here, one is called, let's say, Country Blooms. So when I look at that, whether it's red or yellow, pink, blue, a variety of colors, but when I look at that arrangement, does it reflect country? Have you made it in something like an old boot, or have you made it in a pail? Have you arranged it in a container that kind of reflects that? Or is there something that you've chosen to use, like, you know, I don't know, sunflowers in yarrow? Is your selection of plant material something that reflects that particular theme? So it's not, the colors are all eye-catching, and I think you can use pretty much any color in any arrangement and any color combination, because that's what nature's about. When you are walking out, you know, we don't just see all yellow flowers or, you know, all purple. People, you know, we may have gardens that are planted in a certain theme, but it's like when you look in nature, it's very much about color and texture and things like that. So I think incorporating all of those elements into something that reflects the theme is really is fun for me, I guess, but it's also interesting, and it gives people ideas, and that's kind of what this is all about.
Terry has a question.
Sure.
So are there age classes for this Douglas County Fair open non-4-H is what you're talking about? So are there age specifications, or can even children enter flowers and things?
In open class? That's a great question, because I totally missed that. Yes, so there are categories that are specific to children 12 and under. So if you have a child who's not in 4-H but still wants to enter, for instance, as I'm going through the floral part of it, in marigolds, there's a category there for 3 stems for children 12 and under. You go through with the zinnias. So there's a lot of that as far as in floriculture part of it. And there also is, I believe here, there isn't specifically something for a young person in open class horticulture, but that does not preclude them from entering. Anyone of any age can enter anything in open class. It's when you get to 4-H that you need to be a 4-H member in order to enter that particular segment. But open class, if you are 101, you can enter.
Thanks.
That was a great question.
I'll ask a question here that maybe either you or Tom might ask, who's on the chat. Are there paper copies of the fair book that people can pick up if they don't want to read it online? Tom probably can answer that better. I don't believe that there are. There used to be a number of years ago, but I believe now it's only online. But again, when you're printing, you don't need to print out 120 pages. You can just go and print out, page 78, 79, and 80 and have all of flowers done, and 82, 83, 84, and have all the horticulture done. But Tom may he has answered. Yes, we do not have paper copies this year. But if you're really stuck, you can ask for for particular pages.
Sure, exactly.
So any other questions? Anybody want to raise their hand or jump in about your daylilies that are coming up for the fair, or that big pumpkin you've got growing in your garden? No, nobody has a question about their zucchinis? No. Okay, make sure they're perfect. No yellow spots, I remember. Is there a trick? I'll actually have a question. Is there a trick with the growing some of these things? Or if you just rotate it a little bit because you want to avoid that yellow spot.
Sure.
Right?
Well, again, I am not a horticulture expert by any means, but with flowers, since they're planted in the ground, I'm not sure that there is. Like if you're doing your petunias, if you're doing anything that you've done in a container, then again, turning it, because then you're getting far better, far better sun, even sun on that. You're getting far better at that. But also just taking really good care of your plants. Sometimes it gets to be, the 4th of July and it's like, I'm done. I've been watering for months. I've been fertilizing for months. I've been doing everything for months. But just still continuing to care for them. And that's kind of a year-round thing as far as like with your plants, your outdoor plants, your perennials in particular. It's just making sure you're doing really good cleanup in the fall, so that you're avoiding the diseases and the pests that, as much as you can, that are going to happen when these plants emerge in the spring. And really from the time they emerge, just taking really good care of them, grooming them. If you think you're going to be interested in entering, let's say, oh gosh, well, peonies will never be entered in the Douglas County Fair, but let's pretend they were. So, when a peony comes up and it's got the center bud and then it's got a couple of little smaller buds at the end, really removing those buds, just budding it so that all of the energy is going into that center flower, so that you are giving that much energy, as much energy as possible to that particular bloom. And doing that with other, plants too, just budding. If you're thinking of, like I said, I was thinking of entering, cutting off those side buds, making sure all the energy is going into the bloom that you're going to want to exhibit. That's the way that you can kind of do something like that.
And speaking to the crowds that you had talked about in terms of not bringing grandmas.
Yes, exactly.
Another recommendation is there's not a lot of room to do your grooming.
Yes.
Yes,
exactly. So if it isn't as in the past, they're in the building with food, they're in the building with a lot of crafts. There's a couple of long tables where you come and you place your entries. Now, there may be a little side place where you can get over, but really doing your grooming, getting everything ready so that when you walk in the door, really what you want to be able to do is to go over, give it a final look, you know, once over to make sure, oh my gosh, nothing happened on the way here. You're going to go over there and you're going to fill out your entry form. You're going to fill in the piece of paper that they've got on the table that has your name, address, email address, and phone number so they can contact you, and then just really turning it over. But very, very little grooming should be done there. There are times when we have had entrance bring buckets of flowers and want a place to, you know, put them in the bottles and everything like that. And there's really not a place to do that there. So doing everything at home that you possibly can is the best.
Great, well, thank you very much. If there's no other questions, I'm going to turn this back over to Chris, who will take us out and tell us what's coming up next month.
Thank you, LeAnn. I'm so glad we could finally do this presentation, and I hope it inspires some people to exhibit. Next month, we can look forward to Tom Bueller doing the fall vegetable garden, and the month after that, Emily Dyson for composting. Thank you very much, everybody who made this live session work.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you, LeAnn.
Yeah,
for
thank you,
coming and
Sharon.
doing this month. I think that the live demonstration helped tremendously with this. So thank you, everybody, and we hope to see you next month. And stay cool these next couple days. Bye-bye now.